Hello everyone, we're at the Detroit Historical Museum. I haven't been here since I was a kid, and I feel like a kid in a candy store. And we are with Bob Burry, who is the Executive Director of the Detroit Historical Society. Bob, welcome to Around Town.
It's great to be here and part of the program. Thank you.
Absolutely. This is amazing. First and foremost, admissions to the Detroit Historical Museum is free, and people really need to know that, and you need to come down.
Well, they need to know that because it is free admission. And we're really grateful to our sponsor, Myers, who everyone knows and loves, is one of the generous donors that really keep the Detroit Historical Museum and our other location, the Dawson Great Lakes Museum, free of charge all year for people that come in the door.
Absolutely, and that's on Belle Isle, correct?
Right. The Detroit Historical Society is a nonprofit organization, so the city of Detroit owns the Historical Museum and the Dawson Great Lakes Museum, but we manage it for them because that's what we do. And the Dawson Great Lakes Museum on Belle Isle is also free admission, and it's our maritime museum, which has the best view on Belle Isle of the Detroit River in Canada. Another great attraction for families and really people of all ages.
So when somebody walks in the door, school-age children, adults, and look around, what do they leave with? What concept do they leave with?
Well, you know, what we try to achieve is it goes back to our mission, and our mission is telling Detroit stories and why they matter. Not just showing old historical things, right, which are interesting to some people, sure, but why do they matter today and into the future? So what we try to do here at the Detroit Historical Museum is have something for everyone. Like right now we're sitting in a mid-1800s pharmacy. And the streets of old Detroit is something that usually a lot of people remember because it's always where our school tours come and they learn about Detroit and Michigan in the mid-1800s. But on the next floor we have America's Motor City, the history of the auto industry, which of course is a big story here. But right next to that we have something called the Kid Rock Music Lab in the Alicia Gallery of Culture, which really takes a deep dive into the last 100 years and some of the things in sports, entertainment, pop culture that really define the community.
So it is basically focused on the history of our city and Detroit.
Right. We kind of say we have a filter. Is it has something to do with Detroit, and I call it Detroit with the big D, which means the metro area, sure, southeast Michigan, the big D, as opposed to just the city. And it has to have something to do with Detroit, and it has to be relevant. There's a lot of things that Detroit is well known for, but may not have an interest to visitors. So we really try to gauge what's interesting, what's relevant, which inspires them today and moving into the future.
So you have an exhibit called Detroit 67, and very timely because the movie just came out as well about Detroit, right, and that dark era. So what do we expect to see when we go visit that particular, sure, exhibit?
Well, some of your viewers may remember that 50 years ago, 1967, when there was a major civil uprising in Detroit, but also across America.
Right.
You can call it riot, rebellion, revolution. There's all kinds of words, but we knew we had to tell that story because it was one of the most significant stories over the last 100 years. And we also knew it would be hard to do, so we did that in a very thoughtful way. We engaged a lot of community partners to do that, but most importantly, we took a 150-year look. So we look back to 1917. What were some of those factors, some of those things that contributed to what occurred in 1967? Then we looked from 1967 to the current day, 2017, that 50-year anniversary, and where have we done some really good things? How have we recovered? How have we made some progress? And perhaps where have we fallen short as well, and what's left to do? But the really interesting thing, and this is very innovative for a historical museum, is we looked from 2017 to 2067. So what does Detroit moving forward look like? So after you experience the Detroit 67 Perspectives exhibition, we call it Perspectives because it's everyone's perspective. It's not just my perspective or your perspective or an individual perspective. We interviewed...
Open for interpretation, basically.
Right. We interviewed over 500 people whose narratives, whose we call them oral histories, provided the narrative of the story we told. Rich people, poor people, old people, black people, young people, white people, people that were police officers, people that lived in the neighborhoods, people that were children back then, to get that whole, full, rich story. So after you experience all that, we ask you to say, what's your dreams and hopes and dreams for Detroit? And there's an opportunity to do that. or if you want to get involved in moving Detroit forward, get involved with one of our partners. If it's Focus Hope or New Detroit or Life Remodeled, there's an opportunity for you to do that as well. So it's a little more action-oriented than what we used to call just looking at books on the wall, because you can do that on your phone.
Sure, absolutely. So are there any interactive exhibits that you would recommend us to go see?
Yeah, all of our exhibitions have an element of interactivity, but again, I'm going to go back to the 67 exhibition. There's 3 major interactives in there. One is what we call the living room, because that's how most people experienced what happened. They were watching TV or they were home with their family and the phone rang, something came up over across the TV, and we have a very experiential living room set up there. We also reproduce the street of where it started in a very visual way, and we also reproduced a tank, because in all of our interviews, one of the words that came out more times than anything else was the word tank.
The tank.
Because people have a memory of that. So all very high-tech, high-touch, experiential, not alarmist, but very insightful kinds of interactives.
Wonderful. I can sort of hear all the children out there, which is absolutely wonderful. So what is what would be your outreach or your message to those educators to actually bring their students here?
Well, we have a really excellent school tour program, an adult tour program, and a senior tour program. So for all ages, if you give us a call at the Historical Society here or on our website, you can schedule a time for your school tour. And what that means is we'll give you an organized, classroom-aligned experience for what your students might be learning this year. So it's not just a day off, but it's really a big learning experience. Now today I think we have some summer camps here, so it's kind of a day off. It's a little less fluid. People can go kind of on their own, kind of on an unguided tour, but really to get the full benefit, it's best to schedule it. So we have a trained docent that has that educational background that can really pull out the stories and engage all the participants as well.
Wonderful. I remember coming here as a child, and it really it resonates with you. And you look at the history, and you can make the comparisons of how people lived back then and what they had as tools to what we have now. And so basically innovation as well. So we were talking earlier with the executive director of the Michigan Science Center. So very much of a correlated kind of thing, where you look at the history of where we've been to where we're going.
Well, it sounds trite, but if you don't know your history, you don't know where you're headed.
Your future, absolutely.
And we also have, you mentioned innovation. We have a gallery of innovation, and then on Belle Isle at the Dawson Great Lakes Museum for kind of it's a smaller museum, but it's very interactive. A lot of buttons to press, bells to ring, all that type of thing. But it really talks about how Detroit's location on the river really caused the city to develop the way it did.
Right.
And it was built by the river, from manufacturing to entertainment to Boblo to the freighters to all those things that bring back fond memories. And what's going on in Belle Isle right now, if your viewers haven't been there, it's amazing. It's a total transformation, in my opinion, over the past several years. It makes it very family friendly and worth the visit. And again, it's free admission at the Dawson Great Lakes Museum as well.
Absolutely. So the summer's not over yet. Come to the Detroit Historical Museum here and also the one on Belle Isle and experience history to understand where our future is headed. Thank you so much, Bob, and thank you for allowing us to be here today, and thank you for joining us at Around Town. Meet you at the museum.